Right, well today I'm tying up a nymph, just for a change. I don't do an awful lot of nymph fishing, mainly like to fish dry fly because that's what I enjoy, but when I do, this is the pattern I reach for most of the time. It's a bit of a mismatch really between a pheasant tail and a black and peacock, and it's got a funny tail going on which I'll talk about in a minute. You can tie it on I'm going to tie this on a jig hook, but you could tie it on a curved hook if you wanted to. See that? Both is fine. Right, so the first job, and the nightmare job, is trying to get the damn bead on the hook. So what I do is use some of these like multi-tool type pliers. I'm just going to arrange the bead so I can see where the slot is and where the hole is, and then I'm going to thread the hook onto the bead rather than trying to thread the bead onto the hook, if that makes sense. Watch this all go on the floor now. Right, well I'm just quickly cutting in here because I managed to cunningly do that all off camera, and I also should have mentioned that this is a 2.5mm copper bead. So I've got the bead there in the pliers with the hole looking at me, and then I've got the hook and some hackle pliers. I'm just going to thread that into there, and it's on. Now you have to just muck about with it until it goes around the shank of the hook. But that's the worst bit, getting it to there. Right, back to the video. So we might just have to roll that around a bit until it finds the spot where it wants to go on. And there, it's done it. No disasters this time. Right, so the hook I'm using is one of these fastener type hooks again, and it's an F420, so it's a size 16. For the thread, I'm using some of this fancy Semperfly stuff, and it's in an olive, that's 18O. So I'm going to put a bit of this funny black wax onto the nano thread, as they say you're meant to. Just run that down the shank. Razor blade for cutting this stuff off. It's so tough. It's amazing how it can be so thin and yet so tough. Just about sort of on the bend a bit. For the tail, I'm using some of these Col de Canard tufts. They call them tufts. And this is a medium grade dun. I don't know when I started putting little CDC tails on this nymph, but I do quite a lot of, if I am fishing nymph, I'll tend to twitch it and move it about a bit if the dead drift hasn't worked. And I think this tail just helps give it a bit of movement in the water. It looks like a big ball of fluff when you tie it in, but of course once it gets wet it'll go streamline. I think I've got two there. I've got two there. Don't waste them, Chris. So just tie it in, and then I'm going to adjust the length. Lay on there. And I'm going to put two ribs on this. One is the mylar tinsel, just to give it a little bit of flash, and then I'm going to rib over that with some of this very thin copper wire which I nicked out of something years ago, just to bind it and keep it in some strength. So I'm going to put the copper wire on first because that's going to be the last rib. And then some of this mylar stuff. And then the body is like 2/3 pheasant tail and 1/3 bit of peacock curl. So a few bits of pheasant tail. This is cock pheasant tail. Trim that off a bit there. Bind that all down. And bind this down to the point where I'm going to say that's the end of the pheasant tail body, and that way we won't get a step in it. About there. And as normal with my hurl bodies, I tend to put a bit of varnish on. I don't know if it makes that much difference really when this has got all these ribs on it, but it's force of habit now. Do the bottle up before I knock it over. Make this nice pheasant tail body. About there, I suppose. And then with the rib, I tend to put one piece at the back and then just 2 bits through the body. I suppose if I was using a bigger hook, I might go 3, but that'll do there. Okay. Now for the piece of peacock. I'm going to take one off from below the eye. This has been out in the sun for a bit, so it's got that nice sort of coppery sheen to it. I quite like that on this fly. About 2 or 3 turns of this on at the front. And now I'm going to rib the whole thing back the other way with the copper wire. Try not to cover too much of the... knocking the camera there, apologies. Through the peacock. Couple of turns. Give that a wiggle. Get rid of it. And then whip finished there. Now I'm told that with these new threads you don't really have to put on any head cement, but I still do it. And that's that finished then. Like I say, this is my favourite nymph. If ever I'm going to fish duo or New Zealand style, this is the one that goes on. One other variation I did do was, just get this up here, for my failed grayling attempts, I changed the peacock for some pink, I don't know if that's going to come out on the camera, it's like pink fluorescent thread, like a bit of a hotspot pheasant tail I suppose you'd call it. I'm yet to use it though in anger. Anyway, hope that helps, and we'll see you on the next one.